Flashy girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Oh, Mr. Sheffield. It's a podcast about The Nanny, the hit sitcom from the 90s starring Fran Drescher. I am Sean DePasquale here with...
Doria Sheffield.
That's right, and we are here to talk about Season 3, Episode 5 of The Nanny, Val's Apartment. This is the one wherein Fran... starts to feel like maybe she doesn't have enough of her own free time and decides she's going to go live with Val to prove a point to Mr. Sheffield, who doesn't believe that she can do it. Mm-hmm. And then hilarity ensues, and we get a really great Laverne and Shirley almost crossover, but enough that Tori and I have only talked about Laverne and Shirley this morning.
Yes. It's almost as if it's like within the, you know what it is? It's within now the nanny has entered the Happy Days extended universe.
Agreed.
So that's what that did, because Laverne and Shirley, famously Happy Days spinoff, and now the nanny enters that reality.
And honestly, if you were ever going to do a backdoor pilot, this is the episode I would have done a backdoor pilot for. Like, you do Val and Fran move into an apartment filled with gay men. Fran ends up eventually moving out. And then the spinoff series is called like Val's Apartment. And it's just like Val and these like wacky characters and like her life.
Yeah.
That is a show I would have watched.
Or it's like, Fran has to move out at the end of the episode, but Val gets a different roommate, Or, as I keep pushing for, Cece somehow loses her apartment and gets forced to live
honestly,
with Val.
dude, I would have been happy with Val and Grandma Yetta. Spinoff show.
I think you need a you know how we said like Niles couldn't have his own spin-off show because it's like the stew needs many more ingredients and it can't rely on one spice.
Yeah.
I think I would feel that way about Yetta. That would be like the Golden Girls with just Ma.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, which I don't want to see. I need the Rose. I need the other lady. I need the other lady, Dorothy, and
Rue McClanahan. Okay, so what happened? Let's get into it. What happened in this episode? It starts in the middle of the night. Fran is woken up by the doorbell ringing and ringing and ringing. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. She comes running downstairs. Niles comes out of his room. We get a real funny beat. We get a real funny beat where we find out Niles wears a mouth guard at night because he grinds his teeth, and Fran mentions a cousin she has who grinded her teeth down to the gums and says she was miserable, but her husband loved it.
Yep, I wrote BJ joke in all caps. And
what great cold open.
we also have the joke that, Fran sleeps in a full face of makeup with earrings in case a fireman should come in the middle of the night, and she needs to look her best. I think
I may have told this story on here before, but my grandma used to have a friend who would go to sleep in full makeup and then wait until her husband was in bed and then get up and take her makeup off and set her alarm and wake up early to put her makeup back on.
No, I think that's Miss Maisel.
No. And then it was in Miss Maisel.
Oh my God.
And I turned to Elizabeth watching Miss Maisel and I went, holy shit. My grandma used to tell the story about this lady all the time who did this for years. Like for years. It was like a joke in my grandparents' house that like, oh yeah, she would get up and, her husband never saw her without her makeup on. She would get up every morning at 5 a.m. So like that Miss Maisel bit obviously is from just a thing that women were doing at the time because yeah, like I knew that. Like that stuck with me forever because I never understood the why. And then even as I got older and I started to understand, I was like, well, that seems like an awful way to live your life.
Well, it's definitely one of those things where I feel like you would have read about it in like a how to be the perfect housewife in the 50s. Like,
yes.
Your husband works hard. So like, make sure you look good for him. Wake up at 4 a.m. to make sure you look immaculate. Okay, so we start off solid with a BJ joke and a makeup joke. Sylvia's at the door and she's literally arrived at 5 a.m. just to be like, Fran, how did last night's date go? And Fran's like, oh my, I actually canceled it. And then she literally cowers expecting a blow. I got blow from Sylvia. And then Sylvia's like, you think I'm going to hit you? And then Sylvia does hit her. But she's like, Ma, the kids needed me. And that's where we get this beat that we've had or a sentiment that we've had a few times before from Sylvia, where she's like, when are you going to get a life of your own, Fran? Fran also then tortures Sylvia by saying that she's like, Ma, I do have a life. I actually just got proposed to by an investment banker and he's worth billions. But he had me sign a prenup. And Sylvia literally almost collapses.
There are two things that stuck out with me in the scene. It's Sylvia almost collapsing, but then it's also Sylvia going, how can you sleep like this? Where are your earrings?
Yes.
And she pulls her hair back and she's sleeping with her earrings too.
Yep. Great beat. And again, so funny that Miss Maisel was doing all of this years later, because these are, everyone's like, oh, so revolutionary, but it's a great show, but the nanny was doing it first.
The nanny was doing it first. And, and also it's just like, it really does feel to me like this is obviously a thing that like older Jewish women did, right? Mm-hmm. They went to sleep with makeup on. They didn't want their husbands to see them without makeup. It's like between like my personal connection to it and this show and Maisel, it's like, oh, this was clearly like a, 50s and 60s Jewish woman thing that happened a lot, which is fascinating to me. And also like really depressing.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? Could you imagine though, like your husband never knowing what you look like without makeup? That just seems bananas.
I mean,
how would you even pull that off? What if you got sick? What if you missed a night?
It sounds so stressful, because also like, what if you then like, have like diarrhea or something like there's just like so many things about it that seems like it's just setting you up for such tremendous failure at a certain point.
It's really, it baffled me even as a child hearing that story without knowing the ins and outs of what a relationship's actually like. I can remember my first question just being like, but how? How does she do that?
How does she?
Like, what if he gets up in the middle of the night? He doesn't look over sometimes and go, oh, Jesus Christ.
I know. It just sounds so stressful.
Anyway, so basically this sorts to set the seed that, Sylvia kind of gives Fran shit about not having a life outside of the Sheffields, which I think puts Fran a little bit on like the defensive. Mm-hmm. And then we cut to the kitchen the next morning. We get a great Niles bit where Niles is cleaning the counter. And then Cece says, you've missed a spot, and then pours her coffee all over the counter and then gets on the phone, and Niles soaks up all the spilled coffee with a sponge and then wrings the sponge out into Cece's cup. Yeah. And I was like, this is a good bit. And then they got even me, because then Cece picks up the cup and goes, oh, Mr. Sheffield, I have your coffee.
Yeah, she was, Maxwell, your coffee's ready. And she has this look of satisfaction on her face. Yeah. Because she knows that Niles was going to pull some shit, and now she's turned it around on him.
It was great. It was a great little reversal. Like in the same way the Sylvia line too, where she's like, oh my God, I can't believe you sleep like this. And then she's like, where are your earrings? Like there's a couple good like setups and then reversals.
Yes, there's some good ups. And also Niles, when he realizes that his plan has failed and is backfired, his mouth is literally agape. Like he feels so bested by her.
Yes. Yep.
It was great.
Then we get a very brief appearance by the children, who literally walk through the scene, just sort of catching the audience up on where they're at. It was like the three kids come in and one goes like, I'm still doing psychotherapy. And the other one's like, I do this. And the other one's like, I have to do this today. And then they all leave.
It was just, a reminder that the children still exist.
The children are here. So then Fran comes in, she's tired and she's stressed about her love life. And Val shows up, and this sort of kicks the next part of the plot into gear, because Val's sick of living at home. Mm-hmm. She's like fed up with her parents. She hates living with her parents. And
well, we also have this great beat where she sits down and she's like, oh, Fran, like I'm fed up. I'm 33 years old. And then Fran's are like motions like Niles is here, and they both go like clearing their throats, like and then because it's basically Val has just revealed her true age, and Niles looks at them and he goes, Miss Fine, I thought you and Val were in the same grade. And Fran goes, I skipped several grades. And then she whispers, and she was held back a lot. But we finally get their ages confirmed at 33.
33, yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is about right. That's what we thought.
Yeah, that's what we thought. But it was very funny.
So then we hit the plot point home a little harder because now we cut to Fran in her room trying to get ready and the kids. So first Brighton comes in first and she's like at her, what do you call that? Like a makeup
like
stand. Her like
I know what it's called. Yeah, her vanity.
Thank you, her vanity.
Yeah.
So Fran is at like her vanity and she's wearing like a bathrobe with like a bra and like whatever. And like Brighton just walks in the room, which I thought was very presumptuous.
I mean, but then we find out he walked in to sneak a peek.
He did. He walked in to sneak a peek and she's like, oh my God, Brighton. And she like covers her, she closes her robe. And then she goes, at least when Niles does it, he pretends to vacuum, which sets up a great Niles bit in a couple seconds. And then so then Brighton leaves and then another kid comes in and another kid comes in and they're all bothering her. And she's, like, I just need some alone time. And then that scene ends with Niles vacuuming past the room, slowing down to get a peek, realizing she's not there, and then sadly walking back the other way, dragging the vacuum behind him.
Yes. And the thing is, like, we're laughing about this, and I was genuinely laughing, but in another light, this is a very hostile work environment.
It's a mess.
Call HR. Jeez Louise.
The kids perving on her. The butler's perving on her. I mean, everyone's just like, let me see the nanny naked.
You know what though? This sometimes it kind of reminds me though, like, my mom, had a very, like ambitious career in DC. She's 70 years old now. And I'll always say things like, it's a very male dominated world. And I'll be like, Mom, did you ever have trouble because like you were, a woman in this male environment and blah, blah, blah. And she's always like, no, and kind of insinuates almost that like, that's for like whiners or that's for women that like are asking for it. And then like, literally 10 minutes later, she'll be like, oh yes, that was the boss who said he wouldn't give me a raise unless I dated him. The scamp. Like,
oh boy.
And you're just like, oh no, just the lack of awareness of women in this time.
Yeah. Well, I had a conversation with my mom once at like the height of Me Too. And like, she's come around since, but like the very height of it, my mom was just like, look, this is just how men were. Like, I don't understand. What are we going to punish every man? And I was like, well, I mean, I guess if we have to, like, we should.
No, but it's truly just like, like just expecting nothing better.
Men are perverts and we can't expect anything more from them than that.
Yeah.
Period. Yeah, sad. So, but all of this is to say it really works to hammer home the idea that Fran is like a little annoyed's even the wrong word, just like a little on edge with all of the constant stream of like attention she gets in the Sheffield house, and that she doesn't really have any time to herself. And then we cut to they also quickly set up that she's going out on a date. Mm-hmm. And then we cut to later, she's now out on the porch with her date, who's a podiatrist, and they're making out. And Mr. Sheffield is weirdly like banging on the window of the front door and turning the lights off and on, like acting like her father.
I know, because he wasn't even like, I'm sure it was coming from a jealous place, but it was almost more from like a peering out with like it, like a fatherly place. Like,
yes,
it's time she comes in now.
Yes. And like, what is this man doing to her? Like, yes. Yeah. So, and that is sort of the straw that breaks the camel's back for Fran. She comes inside. She's like, I need space. And Mr. Sheffield's like, I don't want you to go. And then he lists a bunch of stuff that annoys her that she does around the house. And then she's like, oh, yeah, well, what about you? Every time you leave the room, you mention cereal. It's always Cheerios.
Yes. They have the very like kind of one of those charged, tense fights where it's like, well, you're not so easy to live with either. And da-da-da-da-da. And then he's like, fine, go. You'll be crawling back here in a week. And she's like, only if you beg me. And then we had this great line where he goes, you don't think I'm capable of putting 3 children to bed? And she goes, of course you are. Just put them in the front row of one of your latest shows. And I literally go, whoa.
Burn.
And he's like, fine, go. So we established she is out of there.
Yeah. Which brings us to her moving into an apartment with Val. They kind of briefly set this up like earlier. Val sort of mentions she's looking for apartments, but then they just have an apartment. And they move there. Well, first we get a very funny Laverne and Shirley, which once David Lander showed up, I actually thought that the Laverne and Shirley reference prior to that was a little too on the nose. Like they didn't need both. They needed either or. So like first they're standing outside their room to the apartment and they do like the Laverne and Shirley, like Shamil, Shamazel, Haas and Pepper Incorporated. And so I was like, oh, that's cute. It's like Laverne and Shirley bit. That makes sense. But then they walk into the apartment and their landlord walks in and it is David Lander, who played Squiggy on Laverne and Shirley. Now we have to quickly pause to explain. Laverne and Shirley was a TV show. It was a spinoff of Happy Days. Laverne and Shirley were 2 female characters that were like, independent women who were going to live on their own. And they worked in like a bottle factory in Detroit, I believe. And they had these 2 neighbors, Lenny and Squiggy, who were like greasers, I guess. That was the bit, right?
Like greaser wannabes. Like they were not cool, but they thought they were tough.
They were cool.
Yeah, they were not tough, but they thought they were tough. And they were like definitely in love. Squiggy was in love with one of them.
Yes. Lenny was 2, I think. And interestingly enough, Lenny was played by Michael McKean.
Yes.
Who was just in an episode we covered.
He played Cece's brother.
Yes. So I didn't expect a Lenny appearance because that would have broken the continuity of the show in a really weird way.
But I think that would have been funny too.
It would have been funny. And then I was even, I was like, oh, that's funny. They're having him do the Squiggy bit. But then he even says, oh, my partner Leonard. So like they basically took Lenny and Squiggy and made them into a gay couple who are now the landlords of this building.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Look, Bumble knows you're exhausted by dating. All the, must not take yourself too seriously, and 6'1" since that matters, and what do I even say other than, hey? Well, that's why they're introducing an all-new Bumble, with exciting features to make compatibility easier, starting the chat better, and dating safer. They've changed, so you don't have to. Download the new Bumble now.
And I want to say, and I only from sense memory, I believe the apartment that they moved into was the Laverne and Shirley apartment.
It was very similar because I rewatched some stuff, and I'm sure it was intentional, and it was very, very similar. And I mean, but this is just like, it's a genius, hilarious bit to take an established character from another show's canon who has, and then, being like, oh yeah, he's actually in a relationship with that roommate. And like, it was
seamless and it really worked. And you could buy that like, oh yeah, like they don't ever even actually call him Squiggy, I don't think.
No.
They just go, this is our landlord, and he's playing Squiggy though. Like he does the voice.
But it's like if Squiggy came out and then fully embraced his gay side, and was like, he's in like a leopard print blazer and he's like, hello. Like he's not exactly Squiggy, but he's like a hybrid Squiggy. It's almost Laverne and Shirley fanfic.
It's great. It's genuinely great.
But this causes them to realize, though, that they are in a very gay part of town. And one of the ways that Val lured Fran into this plan was, I found an apartment where it's
all guys.
Yeah, it's streaming with single guys, and you're definitely going to meet someone. So, Fran has this great line where she's like, maybe you should have thought twice before leasing an apartment across from the Judy Holiday Inn, who's a famous singer, and, in gay, very beloved in gay culture. And then Val's like, Fran, don't worry. Like, I'm sure there'll be some available guys for us to meet. And no sooner does she do that, does Fran grab the door handle, like throw open the door, and we hear Judy Garland blaring. Mm-hmm. And it's like clang, clang, clang goes the trolley. And it's just a hilarious beat, perfectly timed. It was just, it was such a fun, great scene and concept to, and tie in.
And all the beats in it, Val going, oh my God, there's a roach. And Fran goes, take your shoe off. And then she takes her shoe off. And instead of hitting the roach with her shoe, she steps on the roach with her bare foot.
It killed me. She goes, take your shoe off and kill it. It was so funny. I laughed so hard. And I was not expecting it either.
No, it was a good bit. That was a really good bit. And so then this leads to Fran waking up late for work. We get a funny beat where she wakes up, and I guess it was weird. Does the apartment have no rooms? Because they were both asleep on the couch, which I didn't understand.
Yeah, no, this is why I think it actually differs a little from the Laverne and Shirley apartment. It doesn't go as far back. So we're led to think that, like, not only is this apartment in a unideal part of town, it's kind of a dump, and they're sleeping on a pull-out mattress sharing it. So it's very unideal.
But then there is a bedroom.
Is there? Oh,
yes, because that's where Yetta comes out of.
Oh, I thought she came out of the kitchen, but you're right. Okay. No. Maybe there's just no bed in there yet. We don't know.
It's very weird, but they're very hilariously sleeping on the couch.
Crammed together.
Foot to head. So basically Fran wakes up with Val's feet, like right in her, like literally on her nose.
Yeah.
And she realizes she's late for work. And so she rushes over to the house. And then we cut to the house where everyone is sort of up, and Mr. Sheffield is like, it's 3 minutes after 8. She's late. Of course, she couldn't show up late, on time to work. I knew this would be a disaster. And Fran rushes in wearing her bathrobe,
which I guess she wore on the subway to get there, so she could still have breakfast with the family as usual.
Yes.
But she is in the zone of like pretending everything's fine. She's, she's like, oh, it's great. And then Maggie's even like, are there any cute guys in your building? And she's like, it's like full of, she goes, they're coming out of the closet. Then we do this thing where, so the Sheffields are at least under the impression that Fran is like loving her new life. But so we cut back to the apartment that evening, and Fran and Val, they're both unpacking and killing all the bugs. And then Yetta emerges from the back room, and Fran also establishes that like Val chose an apartment literally like 3 blocks away from Yetta's retirement home. So like yet another reason that this apartment is torturous. And then I like this. We then cut back to dinner at the mansion, and it's the family eating dinner minus Fran. And it's like very strained and quiet. And it's just like very clear that Fran brings so much warmth into their lives, and they like don't really know what to do without her.
Yeah. I mean, my note was, the Sheffields are dull without Fran. Like, cause that's how they, like the way they're talking, they don't really have anything interesting to say to each other. Like the scene firmly establishes that Fran brings color to the Sheffield's lives. Mm-hmm. They would be like a boring WASP family who don't really have much emotional connection to each other at all without her, which is kind of sad. But I guess is also sort of like the like mission statement of the show, so it plays.
Yeah. And it's so much so that literally like after the children are excused, Niles and Mr. Sheffield sit down to have some coffee together. And, at first Mr. Sheffield's like, oh, Niles, it's so peaceful without Miss Vine here. She's always sort of like, flapping about, so making so much noise. And then there's this beat, and Niles is just like, how do you propose we get her back? And then Mr. Sheffield like desperately goes, I don't know. Do you have any ideas? Like he's clearly miserable.
Yep.
And then this gets resolved fairly quickly and in a very funny way. So we cut to sort of a scene later that week, and Fran is getting ready to take off, and she's like, okay, I'm going to leave for the day. At which point the doorbell rings and Sylvia comes storming in, and she kind of like railroads towards Mr. Sheffield. And she's like, how can you allow my daughter to move into that dump? And, Fran's like outraged. She's like, Ma, I'm a grown woman. Like I chose to do it. And she's like, well, you're moving back in. And like, that's final. And then she kind of like, points a finger at both of them, and they both cower, and they're both clearly afraid of Sylvia. It's
really funny.
And then so Mr. Sheffield's like, okay, she'll move back in. And Fran's like, okay, I will. And then Mr. Sheffield leaves while Fran starts to yell. She's like, Ma, I've never been so embarrassed in my entire. And as soon as he's out of earshot, she's like, Ma, you were brilliant. and then, Fran goes into the other room, and Mr. Sheffield comes out, and he's like, Sylvia, you were fantastic. Like, here are those tickets I promised you. So they both clearly went to Sylvia and like begged her to
fix this.
Yes. But like neither of them wanted to actually lose face and say that. So that gets resolved. And then we have that nice little button at the end where, Mr. Sheffield pulls out a little gift, and he's like, Miss Fine, this was supposed to be a housewarming present, but I guess now it's a welcome home gift. And she opens it, and it's a Judy Garland CD.
This episode also had like multiple songs on it, like Celebrate by Kool and the Gang. Like, did you notice that? Like there was like soundtrack, and then the next episode also has that, where like all of a sudden you're like, oh, they have like more money because like they're licensing songs to play in between scenes.
Yes.
And then also the next episode has like an outdoor montage that I was surprised to see.
It was a little jarring to expand the world of the show.
Yeah.
Like that. It was a little jarring.
And to hear music that isn't just like there's normally just like a little like do like little piano music in between scenes. So I thought that was interesting how the show is starting to expand its budget clearly by like, licensing songs and doing that kind of stuff. And I mean, that's basically the episode. The button is sort of like, we both really wanted Fran back, but didn't know how to make it happen. And no one wanted to admit they were wrong. So they had Sylvia do it.
Yep. Yep. I also have the note though, that like, I guess through the lens of, these girls really want to meet single guys would make them like unhappy in this neighborhood. But I honestly think like, two single women living in like Tribeca or a gay neighborhood is like actually a New York dream. Like, fun, safe. I think a lot of women would actually be like, this is amazing. But it was a really fun episode, very creative. And also, it was not shoehorned in. It totally was in line with like the themes that we've established in the show. I think this is like a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. So should we move on to our segments?
We should move on to segments. And now, segments.
So, segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now, segments.
Segments. With Sean and Toria. One of my favorite lines is when Sylvia barges in early in the morning to check on Fran's date, she then looks at Niles and she goes, Niles, do I smell banana fritters with fruit compote? And he goes, no. And she goes, could I? Totally abusing and taking advantage of the help that works in her daughter's place of business. I also really liked when Fran's reading the paper and she's reading the marriage announcements and she goes, oh, why do they show pictures for wedding announcements? Who cares what someone looks like if they're not available? Divorce announcements. That's where I want to see a picture, which is just like very practical. And then I laughed out loud. This is my last one where Leonard says,
Squiggy.
Squiggy. Sorry. Squiggy says he comes in and he welcomes him to the building. And then he's like, I need to go. Like, it's our 17-year anniversary. And he goes, 17 is meat. it was just so funny and sexual, but also
weird,
just silly. Those are mine that I flagged specifically, but I liked the whole episode.
I did too. I love this episode. I really liked the Cheerio line. Every time you leave the room, you mention cereal. I thought that was really funny. And then I didn't write the line down, but it's when Fran shows up late for work in her robe and Cece compares her to Kato Kaelin, which I also really like.
This show loves their OJ references.
Bro, this was all it was in the 95 to 96, 97. That's all there was. Comedy defaulted to Kato Kaelin, OJ Simpson jokes.
Yeah, and Kato Kaelin, by the way, was a guy who I think lived on OJ Simpson's property.
Yeah, he lived in the pool house in the back. He was just a failed actor.
Yeah, and a kind of a key witness to the case. Would you have any other favorite lines?
No, those were my big ones. We mentioned a lot in the thing. I loved everything with Squiggy. Yeah, this was a stellar episode for me. Really liked this one.
And so, when we asked for listener feedback, it's funny because we didn't get anything super specific. It was just I loved this, I love this, I love this,
Yeah.
And so that was my main note. I was like, well, I'm not even going to really call it out. It was just emphatic.
People love this episode.
Yeah. Yeah. And then for Yiddish, we had 3 Yiddish words that I clocked. A couple we've already heard before. Schlub, which is an unkept or boorish person. We have schlep, which is to go out of your way to get somewhere. And then one that we've never heard before. And it was fantastic because Niles is the one who used it. Yep. Further enforcing that, Fran is really rubbing off on this family. He's like, sir, I have a yen for one of those Milano cookies. And a yen is a yearning for.
Is that a Yiddish word?
It is. It is.
Get out of here.
Yeah. So it was great.
Huh, that's crazy.
Yeah, and it was just again very funny to hear a dignified English butler use it.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a Yiddish word.
Then nanny trivia. So both the nanny theme song and Making Our Dreams Come True, which is the Laverne and Shirley theme song, they're both often featured on compilations of the catchiest theme songs of all time, which is, not shocking. They're both extreme. I've been singing Making Your Dreams Come True all week.
Yeah. And
then both shows are featured on a Mike.com's compilation of, it's basically an LGBTQ TV show, gay to queer television matrix.
Yeah. The TV to gay people pipeline.
Yes. And kind of ranking shows that either were outright introducing prominent gay characters or were just sort of had queer themes subtly in them.
Yeah. I mean, Laverne and Shirley was nebulous enough, but also I think there was a big, they're probably lesbians subtext to all of it.
It went so far as I was actually is there Laverne and Shirley fanfic? Which I'm sure there is. I was actually Googling Lenny and Squiggy fanfic. Couldn't find any. Thought I might.
I think Lenny and Squiggy and Laverne and Shirley predate the term fanfic by a lot.
I know, but I thought, you never know. The internet has a lot out there. But yeah, they both kind of, and I'm actually someone where, sometimes I think it's a little bit of a cop-out when people or critics push a romantic or sexual dynamic between female friends. Because I'm almost it's almost... Yeah. It's very sad that some people can't conceive of a very strong, even intimate or meaningful relationship that
between two women.
Yeah, that's devoid of sex.
Which is hilarious because I feel like women are known for being able to have very strong, deep, meaningful relationships with each other and have it not be based on sex. Yeah. So it's weird. It's such a weird place for most people to assume that relationships, because it's that's what women do. They have very deep emotional connections.
Yeah, I'm almost I guess it's sad for you that our culture doesn't allow men to have such things. So I'm
men can't process the idea of being emotionally intimate without sex being attached. That's the problem. Men don't understand how you can open up emotionally to someone without having sex with them, which is very depressing for men.
Hey, we got a little Gracie over here. We should call this Gracie Corner whenever we get into our therapy talk. And then for the Fran or the Cece, I said I could see us both doing something totally senseless just to prove a point, and even something that would like detract from our own quality of life.
I agree.
So I was like, I gotta do that. I'd do what Fran did, and then I would just really hope that it worked itself out. I didn't have to live here anymore.
Same.
Yeah. So that's the episode, everybody.
Fantastic episode. I really loved it. 10 out of 10. And if you think that this show is a 10 out of 10, then what you should probably do is go to Spotify podcasts or Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review, rate, a 5-star rating, leave a nice glowing review for the show. That actually tricks the algorithm into showing the show to more people that maybe wouldn't have seen it. So let's just keep telling people about this show because we love doing it and we love that you listen, and I would love to continue to grow the audience. If you want to talk to us or if you want to check out what episodes we're recording next, check out our Instagram or our Twitter, and that is Oh Mr. Chef Pod, chef with 2 F's and an SH. And let us know what your thoughts are, because I really enjoy that new feature of the show. I like talking about what people think. It's cool. And that's it for us this week. All right. Short and sweet.
Stay golden, everybody.
That's right. Stay golden, Pony Boy. Good night, Gracie. And
good night, Vietnam.
And good night, Vietnam. All right. Bye.
All right, bye, guys.
The Flushing girl from Flushing. The nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.